stood in my parents' kitchen, the air thick with betrayal. The smell of Mom's fresh-baked cookies filled the room. Still pushing papers, Sarah, her voice cut like a blade. David's phone buzzed his marketing triumphs, stealing their praise. Ethan's worried eyes locked with mine, heavy with unspoken pain. Old wedding photos sat dusty on the oak shelf, mocking me. My fingers gripped the warm coffee mug, steadying my trembling hands. They lifted David up, blind to the strength I'd built. I'd climbed to director of a $500 million tech project. Yet here I was, just the desk job sister, invisible. Lily's giggle faded, her small hand brushing mine softly. Dad's voice echoed Mom's, "Same old job, huh, Sarah?" My heart pounded their words, slicing deeper than I expected. The oven's hum filled the silence, heavy with their dismissal. I'd carried a secret, a truth that could shift everything. For years, I'd been a shadow in their perfect family story. Ethan's flinch told me he saw my pain too. I wasn't just their daughter, I was something more. The reunion table was set, plates gleaming under soft light. Mom's cookies sat untouched, their sweetness now bitter to me. I'd fought through a divorce, raised 2 kids alone. Mark, my ex, had drained our savings, left me broken. Yet I'd rebuilt step by step in quiet strength. They didn't know the weight of my hidden victory. I glanced at the shelf, my old wedding ring glinting. It reminded me of years spent proving my worth. David laughed, his voice drowning out my silent resolve. I'd saved a company from ruin, earned my CEO's praise. But here I was, still the overlooked middle child. My chest tightened, a fire sparking deep within. I could stay silent, let their assumptions stand unchallenged. Or I could make them see the woman I'd become. The choice loomed heavy as the mug in my hands. Lily's small voice broke through. "Mom, you okay?" I smiled, hiding the storm raging inside my heart. This wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family's eyes? Would you stay quiet or demand they see your truth? Where are you listening from? Share your story below. The morning sun spilled through my apartment's thin curtains. I woke to the hum of my alarm at 6:00 a.m. The smell of fresh coffee curled from the kitchen counter. Ethan shuffled out his backpack, slung over one shoulder. Lily's crayons scattered across the table, a colorful mess. I sipped my coffee, its warmth steadying my tired hands. This was my life now in Austin's quiet suburbs. After the divorce, I'd carved out this small space. Mark, my ex, had left us with almost nothing. He'd drained our savings, claiming it was for business. I rebuilt piece by piece for Ethan and Lily. The kitchen clock ticked, marking another day's start. My phone buzzed with a work email, urgent. As project manager, I juggled deadlines and dreams. The tech office was my second home, always buzzing. Charts and spreadsheets covered my desk, a chaotic order. I'd climbed to director of a $500 million project. Nobody knew, not my parents, not even David. I drove Ethan to school, his earbuds blocking me out. Lily hummed in the back seat, clutching her stuffed bunny. The car smelled faintly of her strawberry shampoo. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror, heart swelling. They were why I kept going despite everything. Mark's betrayal had nearly broken us years ago. Back in 20, I found his secret bank account. He'd funneled our money, leaving me with bills. The divorce papers sat heavy in my hands then. I signed them in our old kitchen alone. The memory stung like touching a fresh bruise. I pushed it down, focusing on today's tasks. At the office, my team huddled around a whiteboard. The air smelled of dry erase markers and stale coffee. "Sarah, you're killing it," my colleague Jen said. I smiled, hiding the weight of my family's doubt. Mom's words from the reunion echoed, still pushing papers. They didn't see the empire I was building. I checked my phone, another family group chat. Ping. David's latest promotion dominated their conversation again. His marketing campaigns were the talk of Austin. My fingers hovered over the screen, unsent words waiting. Should I tell them about my promotion now? I locked the phone, shoving it in my bag. Back home, I cooked dinner, the stove's heat warming me. The sizzle of chicken filled the quiet apartment. Ethan helped set the table, his movements slow. "Mom, why don't you tell them?" he asked softly. I paused, the spatula heavy in my hand. He saw through me, always had. Lily ran in her drawing of our family in hand. "Mom, look, you're the strongest," she giggled. Her words hit like sunlight breaking through clouds. I hugged her, the paper crinkling against my chest. But the reunion sting lingered sharp and raw. They didn't know the woman I'd become. My laptop glowed, an email from my CEO waiting. "Outstanding leadership." "Sarah," it read, praising my work. I'd saved the company from a financial nosedive. The words felt like a medal I couldn't wear. I closed the laptop, the screen's light fading. Why did their approval still matter so much? I tucked Lily into bed, her bunny tucked close. The soft creak of her bed frame filled the room. Ethan lingered in the hallway, his eyes searching mine. "Mom, you're enough," he said. Voice barely audible. My throat tightened, his words a quiet anchor. I nodded, unable to speak through the lump. The apartment settled into its nighttime hum. The fridge's low buzz was my only company. I stood by the window, city lights twinkling below. My family's voices replayed, dismissing my every step. I'd hidden my triumph, but not for long. The conference was coming, my moment to shine. I pulled out an old photo from a drawer. It was me smiling at my first job celebration. The frame's edges were worn like my resolve. I'd fought through Mark's betrayal, rebuilt my life. Yet my family saw only David's polished success. My fingers traced the glass, a silent vow. The clock struck 9, its chime soft but steady. I poured another coffee, the mug warm again. My promotion was my secret, a card unplayed. I'd carried their doubts, let them shape me. But now I felt a shift, a fire growing. The conference would show them who I was. I sat at the kitchen table, pen in hand. A notebook lay open, my thoughts spilling out. Should I invite them to the conference, reveal everything, or let their assumptions crumble when they see? The pen scratched the paper, my heart racing. This was my story, and I'd write the ending. The office air buzzed with the hum of computers. I sat at my desk, charts glowing on my screen. The smell of dry erase markers clung to my hands. My phone vibrated, a new message in the family chat. David's promotion party was set for next weekend. No one mentioned my upcoming conference keynote speech. I leaned back, the chair creaking under my weight. My family's dismissal stung sharper than I expected. I'd saved a company, yet they saw only David. The conference was days away, my moment to shine. But their group chat buzzed with plans for him. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating. I wanted to type, "I'm speaking at a major conference." The words sat heavy, unsent in my mind. Instead, I opened an email from my CEO, Susan. "Sarah, your leadership saved us," her message read. Pride swelled, but it clashed with family silence. The office clock ticked relentless, marking my doubt. I drove to Ethan's school, the car radio low. The Austin skyline blurred past lights, just waking up. Ethan climbed in his backpack, heavy with books. "Mom, why don't you go to David's party?" he asked. His voice was soft, but it cut deep. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles whitening. "I have my conference," I said, voice steady. He nodded, but his eyes held quiet worry. The smell of his gym bag filled the car. Lily's school was next, her laughter echoing outside. She ran to me, her ponytail bouncing wildly. My heart softened, but the ache lingered. Back home, the kitchen smelled of last night's dinner. I flipped through mail bills, stacking like burdens. A letter from the conference organizers caught my eye. Keynote speaker Sarah Mitchell, it proudly declared. I traced the words, my chest tight with anticipation. But my family's party plans overshadowed my moment. I called my friend Jen, needing her steady voice. We met at a coffee shop, its aroma grounding me. The clink of cups filled the bustling space. "They don't see you, Sarah," Jen said gently. Her words mirrored the hurt I tried to bury. I sipped my latte, its warmth fleeting. "They're planning David's party during my conference," I said. Jen's eyes widened, her fork pausing midair. "That's not fair," she said, voice firm. I nodded, staring at the table's worn wood. My family's priorities felt like a deliberate slight. The coffee shop's chatter faded my thoughts loud. I remembered Mom's call last week praising David. His campaign went viral, she'd said, voice bright. I'd mentioned my project, but she changed the subject. The memory burned like touching a hot stove. I'd worked years to rebuild after Mark's betrayal, yet they still saw me as just Sarah. At the office, my team prepped for the conference. The projector's hum filled our meeting room. I reviewed slides, my voice steady but heart racing. My colleagues nodded their respect clear in their eyes, but my family's indifference loomed a heavy shadow. I clutched my pen, its weight grounding me. I drove home, the sunset painting the sky orange. Lily's drawings were taped to the fridge door. One showed me in a cape, a superhero mom. I smiled, but the family chat pinged again. David's party needs more chairs, Mom texted. My stomach twisted, their oversight cutting deeper. I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open. The conference agenda glowed my name in bold. I'd led a room of industry giants soon, but my parents hadn't asked about my work. David's success was their son. I was a shadow. My fingers trembled, hovering over the reply button. I recalled Mark's lies, how he'd drained our savings. The divorce had left me raw but stronger. I'd built this life for Ethan and Lily, yet my family's dismissal echoed his betrayal. The kitchen clock ticked, each second a challenge. I could confront them now or wait. The conference loomed a chance to prove myself, but their party plans felt like a wall. I closed my laptop, the screen's light fading. Ethan walked in his sneakers, squeaking on the floor. "Mom, you're gonna kill it," he said quietly. His faith sparked something fierce in me. I stood the chair, scraping against the tile. The smell of tonight's dinner lingered, comforting. I'd carried their doubts too long silently. The conference was my stage, my truth ready. Would I invite them, force them to see, or let their assumptions crumble in time? I looked at Lily's drawing, my cape bold. My resolve hardened, a quiet fire growing. The family chat stayed open, their plans unchanged. I wasn't just their sister or daughter anymore. This was my moment, and I'd claim it. Would you confront your family or prove them wrong silently? The hotel ballroom buzzed with anticipation, lights bright overhead. I adjusted my conference badge, its weight grounding me. The smell of fresh coffee wafted from the buffet. My heels clicked on the polished marble floor. Today was my keynote, my moment to shine. But my family's dismissal lingered, a sharp sting. I glanced at my phone, the family chat silent. They were busy planning David's promotion party. No one asked about my conference, my achievement. My fingers tightened around the badge's lanyard. I'd saved a company, yet they saw nothing. The ballroom's hum grew louder, my heart racing. My team huddled backstage, their smiles steadying me. The projector screen glowed, my slides ready. "Sarah, you've got this," Jen whispered, her voice warm. I nodded, but Mom's words echoed, just pushing papers. The betrayal cut deeper now, raw and exposed. I stepped toward the stage, breath catching. The crowd settled, their eyes fixed on me. I gripped the podium, its cool wood anchoring me. The microphone hummed softly, amplifying my resolve. I began, my voice steady, words flowing effortlessly. I spoke of leading a $500 million tech project. The audience leaned in their attention, a quiet roar. Halfway through, I spotted familiar faces in the crowd. Mom, Dad, and David sat near the back. Their presence jolted me, my pulse quickening. Jen had invited them, thinking it'd bridge the gap. Their eyes widened as I detailed my success. David's jaw tightened, his phone forgotten. I flashed back to 2018, signing divorce papers. Mark's lies had left me financially broken. The kitchen table then was cold, unforgiving. I'd rebuilt alone for Ethan and Lily. Yet my family still saw me as less. The memory fueled my words, sharp and clear. The screen behind me showed revenue charts soaring. I explained how my strategy saved the company. Applause erupted, a wave crashing over me. My CEO, Susan, stood, her nod full of pride. I caught Dad's eye, his face unreadable. Mom shifted, her hands clasped too tightly. I paused, letting the moment sink in. David whispered to Mom, his voice too low. They hadn't known, hadn't cared to ask. My chest ached, but I stood taller now. I'd carried their doubts, let them define me. Today, I was rewriting that story. The speech ended, the room exploding with cheers. I stepped off the stage legs, trembling slightly. The air smelled of perfume and polished wood. Colleagues swarmed, their praise warm but overwhelming. I scanned for my family, heart pounding. They approached, their faces a mix of shock. "Sarah, I had no idea," David said softly. His words hung heavy with unspoken regret. Mom's eyes darted away, her silence loud. Dad nodded, a flicker of respect breaking through. I wanted to feel triumph, but doubt lingered. Would this change how they saw me? We stood in the bustling ballroom, lights glaring. The clink of coffee cups filled the air. I clutched my badge, its edges digging in. Their presence here wasn't closure, not yet. I'd exposed my truth, but their response mattered. My throat tightened, anticipation mixing with fear. I remembered Ethan's words. "You're enough, Mom." His faith had carried me through this moment. Lily's drawing of me as a superhero flashed. I'd fought for them, for myself, against all odds. But my family's silence had been a second betrayal. Their shock now felt like a fragile victory. We moved to a quieter corner, voices low. Mom fidgeted with her purse, avoiding my gaze. "Sarah, that was impressive," Dad said slowly. His words were careful, not fully warm. David's phone stayed in his pocket at first, but their hesitation cut sharp as a knife. I wanted to ask why they never believed in me. The question burned, but I held it back. The ballroom's chatter faded, my focus narrowing. I'd shown them my strength, my undeniable truth. Yet their half-hearted praise felt like a wall. I stood firm, my resolve unbroken. The conference continued, colleagues buzzing around me. I smiled, but my heart wrestled with hurt. The weight of their doubt hadn't fully lifted. I'd laid my success bare, but what now? Would they finally see me or stay blind? The answer loomed heavy as the moment. I walked to the buffet, the coffee smell grounding. My hands steadied, pouring a cup slowly. Their faces replayed a mix of awe and discomfort. I'd forced them to see, but at what cost? The conference was my triumph, but not enough. I needed more than their shocked stares. The lights dimmed as the next speaker began. I stood alone, the crowd's energy swirling around. My family had seen me, but not fully. Their dismissal had shaped me, but no longer. I'd claimed my stage, my voice ringing clear. The applause from the conference still echoed in my mind. I stood in my apartment, the fridge humming softly. Lily's crayons lay scattered across the kitchen table. My keynote had stunned my family, or so I thought. Their half-hearted nods replayed a bitter aftertaste. The air smelled faintly of last night's dinner. I'd expected their pride to shift in their eyes. Instead, Mom's voice lingered, "David's still our star." Her words landed like a punch I didn't see. I clutched a glass of water, its coolness grounding me. The living room lamp cast a dim, uneven glow. My triumph felt hollow, their approval still distant. I sat on the couch, Ethan's sneakers by the door. The fabric felt worn, familiar under my fingers. I'd shown them my strength, laid it bare. But their silence at the conference stung deeper now. Dad's faint nod wasn't the respect I craved. David's muttered words hadn't closed the wound. I opened my laptop, the screen's light harsh. Emails from colleagues praised my keynote, my leadership. "You saved us, Sarah," one read from Susan. I should have felt proud, but my heart sank. Why did their validation matter more than this? The clock ticked, each second heavy with doubt. Ethan walked in, his backpack slung low. "Mom, you were awesome," he said, voice quiet. His words warmed me, but not enough. Lily ran in, her drawing clutched tightly. "Look, Mom, you're my hero," she beamed. I hugged her, her hair smelling of strawberry shampoo. But the family gathering later that week loomed. They'd invited me to their house post-conference. I drove there, the Austin skyline fading behind. The car radio played softly, a low hum. My hands gripped the wheel, nerves twisting inside. Would they finally see me or dismiss me again? Their suburban home smelled of Mom's fresh cookies. The dining table was set plates neatly aligned. David sat across his phone, finally still. Mom bustled in the kitchen, her apron tied tight. Dad poured wine, his movements slow, deliberate. The air felt thick, heavy, with unsaid words. I waited for them to mention the conference. The clink of forks filled the awkward silence. David's campaign is going national, Mom said brightly. My stomach dropped, their focus unchanged. I'd stood on a stage, commanded a room. Yet here I was, still just Sarah. I cleared my throat, the sound sharp in the room. I spoke at the conference, I said firmly. Mom paused, her fork hovering midair. That's nice, dear, she said, voice flat. Dad nodded, his eyes on his plate. David shifted, his gaze flickering to me. Nice, I repeated, my voice barely steady. I led a $500 million project, I pressed. The words hung heavy in the quiet room. Mom's smile faltered, her hands folding tightly. Well, David's work reaches millions, she said. My chest tightened, their dismissal a fresh cut. I flashed back to the divorce, Mark's betrayal. He'd left me with nothing but empty promises. I'd rebuilt for my kids, for myself. But this table felt like another abandonment. The wine glass trembled in my hand, untouched. Their praise for David drowned my truth. I looked at Ethan, his eyes soft with worry. He knew the weight of their words, too. Lily's small hand brushed mine under the table. Her touch was a lifeline pulling me back. I wasn't here for their approval, I realized. This hurt couldn't define me anymore. I stood the chair, scraping against the floor. I need some air, I said, voice calm. The backyard was dark, the grass cool underfoot. The night air smelled of jasmine, sharp and sweet. I stood alone, the stars above, steady, unmoving. Their words had broken me, but not forever. I thought of my keynote, the room's applause. My colleagues saw me, valued my work. Ethan and Lily believed in me, always had. Why was I chasing my family's fleeting praise? The realization hit heavy, but freeing. My worth wasn't theirs to measure. I walked back inside, the warmth enveloping me. Mom's cookies sat untouched. Their sweetness faded. David glanced up, his face softer now. Sarah, I didn't realize, he said quietly. But his words came too late, too small. I nodded, my heart already shifting. The dining room felt smaller, less daunting now. I sat, my posture straighter, more certain. Their dismissal had pushed me to my lowest. But in that darkness, I found my own light. I didn't need their pride to feel whole. This was my turning point, my truth. I drove home, the city lights blurring past. Ethan and Lily slept in the back seat, peaceful. The car smelled faintly of Lily's stuffed bunny. I'd faced their doubt, and it hadn't broken me. Instead, it showed me what I already knew. My strength was mine, not theirs to give. The apartment was quiet, the fridge's hum soft. I stood by the window, Austin's skyline twinkling. I'd lost their approval, but gained something greater. My heart steadied, the ache easing slightly. I was enough for me, for my kids. Could I heal without their validation? The morning rain tapped softly against my apartment window. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee steaming in my mug. The smell of roasted beans grounded my restless thoughts. Ethan's sneakers lay by the door, mud-stained. Lily's stuffed bunny rested on the counter, slightly worn. I'd faced my family's dismissal, and it burned. Their words at dinner replayed sharp and unyielding. Mom's praise for David had drowned my truth. I'd stood on a stage, earned a room's respect. Yet they saw me as the same old Sarah. My fingers traced the mug's warm ceramic edge. I was done chasing their fleeting approval. I opened my laptop, the screen's glow harsh. An email from my lawyer waited, marked urgent. I'd asked her to review our family trust. Mark's betrayal had taught me to protect myself. The trust held assets tied to my parents. I needed control for me, for my kids. The rain grew heavier, drumming on the roof. I thought of Ethan and Lily, my anchors. Their faith in me was unshakable, pure. I'd rebuild my worth, starting with this dinner. I planned to host them at my new home. The invitation would be my first move. I drove to a park, needing space to think. The air smelled of wet grass and earth. My boots sank slightly into the soft ground. I sat on a bench, the wood cool and damp. The plan formed a dinner to confront their doubt. My heart raced, but my resolve held firm. I called Jen, her voice a steady lifeline. We met at her office, papers strewn everywhere. The smell of printer ink filled the small room. "Sarah, you don't need their validation," she said. Her words echoed Ethan's, sparking a fire within. I nodded, my plan taking sharper shape. Back home, I drafted the dinner invites. The pen scratched softly, ink bleeding into paper. I'd cook, set the table, speak my truth. Lily wandered in, her crayons in hand. "Mom, are Grandma and Grandpa coming?" she asked. I smiled, her innocence softening my edges. The apartment felt alive with quiet purpose. I pulled out recipes, the pages worn from use. The smell of fresh herbs lingered from last night. I'd roast chicken, make Mom's favorite dessert. This dinner wasn't just food, it was a statement. I wanted them to see me fully. I visited my lawyer, her office stark and bright. The leather chair creaked as I sat down. "We can secure your share," she said calmly. The trust details unfolded, complex but clear. I'd protect Ethan and Lily's future no matter what. My hand steadied, signing the initial papers. At the grocery store, the aisles buzzed quietly. I picked out ingredients, the cart's wheels squeaking. The fluorescent lights cast a sterile glow overhead. I imagined their faces when I spoke my truth. Would they listen or dismiss me again? My chest tightened, but I kept moving. I drove to Ethan's school, the rain now gone. The sun broke through, warming the car's interior. He climbed in his backpack, heavy with books. "Mom, you seem different," he said, eyes searching. I smiled, his words a quiet validation. He saw me even when they didn't. Back home, I prepped the kitchen, knife in hand. The chopping board smelled faintly of lemon. Lily helped, her small hands arranging napkins. Her chatter filled the room, light and hopeful. I glanced at her, my purpose growing stronger. This dinner was for them, for us. I sat at my desk, the lamp casting soft light. The conference badge lay in a drawer untouched. Its weight reminded me of my earned triumph. I'd saved a company, rebuilt my life. Their dismissal couldn't erase that truth. My fingers typed the invites, each word deliberate. The family chat pinged, David's name popping up. He'd shared another article about his campaign. Mom replied with praise, Dad added emojis. My name was absent as always. I closed the chat, my heart steady now. Their silence wouldn't define me anymore. I stood stretching in the quiet apartment. The fridge hummed a familiar nighttime sound. I pictured the dinner, their faces around my table. I'd speak of my journey, my strength, my worth. The thought was heavy, but I was ready. This was my stand, my quiet rebellion. I walked to Lily's room, her nightlight glowing. She slept, her bunny tucked under her arm. The soft creak of the floorboards followed me. Ethan's door was cracked, his music faintly audible. They were my legacy, my reason to fight. I'd show my family who I'd become. The invite sat printed, ready to send. The smell of ink lingered in the air. I sealed each one, my hands steady now. This dinner would be my moment, my truth. Their doubt had pushed me to this edge. I was ready to rewrite our story. Would you speak your truth or stay silent forever? Have you ever had to prove your worth to family? Where are you listening from? Share your story below. The new house smelled of fresh paint and roasted chicken. I stood in the kitchen apron, tied tightly around me. The oven's warmth filled the room, steadying my nerves. Ethan set the table, his movements careful and precise. Lily arranged napkins, her small hands folding them neatly. Tonight I'd face my family, my truth ready. The dining room glowed under soft chandelier light. Plates gleamed, reflecting the care I'd poured in. The invitations had been sent, my plan set. I'd speak my journey, make them see me. The smell of rosemary drifted from the oven. My heart pounded, but my resolve was iron. I'd moved here to this spacious Austin home. It was a symbol of my hard-won success. The hardwood floors shone, polished and new. I'd rebuilt after Mark's betrayal for my kids, but my family's doubt still lingered a shadow. Tonight I'd shatter it with quiet strength. I checked the chicken, its golden skin sizzling. The kitchen clock ticked each second heavy. Ethan glanced at me, his eyes full of trust. "Mom, they'll listen," he said. Voice soft. I nodded, his faith anchoring my courage. Lily hummed, placing a centerpiece of daisies. I pulled out my notes, scribbled in haste. Words of my journey, my pain, my triumph. The pen's ink had smudged like my doubts. I'd saved a company, earned my place. Yet Mom's voice echoed David's, our star. I pushed it down, focusing on tonight. The doorbell rang sharp in the quiet house. My parents stepped in, their faces cautiously warm. Mom carried a pie, its crust golden brown. Dad's eyes scanned the house, surprise flickering. David followed, his usual confidence slightly dimmed. The air felt thick, charged with anticipation. We sat the table, a stage for truth. The clink of glasses broke the tense silence. I served the chicken, its aroma filling the room. Mom complimented the house, her voice polite. Dad nodded, his fork tapping the plate softly. David's eyes met mine, searching, unsure. I took a breath, the air warm and heavy. "I want to talk about us," I began. My voice was steady, though my hands trembled. The chandelier's light cast shadows on their faces. I spoke of Mark's betrayal, the divorce's weight. Their eyes widened, but no one spoke. I told them of my climb, my struggles. The nights spent studying while the kids slept. The office battles, the weight of responsibility. My conference keynote, the applause I'd earned. The room was silent, their forks still. My words hung heavy, but freeing. Mom shifted her napkin, twisted in her hands. Dad's gaze dropped, his face unreadable. David leaned forward, his phone nowhere in sight. "I rebuilt for Ethan and Lily," I said. Their names grounded me, my voice stronger now. The table felt smaller, the moment vast. I paused, letting the truth settle in. The smell of pie lingered, sweet and familiar. I'd carried their doubt, let it shape me. But I was more than their overlooked daughter. I was a leader, a mother, a survivor. Their silence now was a crack in their wall. I glanced at Ethan, his proud smile steadying. Lily's eyes sparkled, her small hand brushing mine. The table's wood felt warm under my fingers. I'd prepared this moment, rehearsed every word, but their response was still a mystery. Would they hear me or deflect again? Dad cleared his throat, his voice low. "Sarah, we didn't know," he said slowly. Mom's eyes darted away, her hands still. David nodded, his face softer, almost regretful. Their words were small, not enough yet. My heart raced, the moment teetering. I stood the chair, scraping softly against the floor. The dinner wasn't over, but the air shifted. I'd laid my truth bare, unapologetic. The candles flickered, casting a warm glow. I was ready for their response, whatever it was. This was my stand, my quiet power. The kitchen clock chimed, marking the hour. I refilled their glasses, my hands steady now. The room felt alive, heavy with unspoken truths. I'd built this home, this life, this moment. Their doubt had pushed me here to this edge. Now I held the power to reshape us. Ethan helped clear plates, his movements quick. Lily hummed softly, stacking napkins in a pile. My parents sat, their faces a mix of awe. David's silence was louder than his usual boasts. I'd set the stage, but the climax waited. Their next words would define our future. The smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen. I poured a cup, its warmth calming my nerves. This dinner was my plan, my truth unveiled. I'd fought for my place, earned my strength. Their doubt couldn't hold me back anymore. I was ready, but were they? Is this justice, or am I pushing too far? The dining room glowed, candles flickering on the table. The smell of roasted chicken lingered, warm and rich. I stood, my hands steady, voice ready to break. Ethan's eyes met mine, his nod a quiet strength. Lily clutched her napkin, her small face expectant. Tonight I'd claim the truth they'd ignored. My parents sat, their forks still, faces tense. David leaned back, his usual confidence gone. The chandelier's light cast shadows across their plates. I took a breath, the air heavy with anticipation. "I'm not just your daughter or sister," I began. My words cut through the room's thick silence. "I rebuilt my life after Mark's betrayal," I said. "The divorce left me with nothing but debt. I fought for Ethan and Lily alone always. The conference proved I'm more than you see. I led a $500 million project, saved a company. Yet you praised David, never asking about me." Mom's eyes dropped, her hands twisting her napkin. Dad's face tightened, his wine glass untouched. David shifted his gaze, flickering with unease. The table felt smaller, their silence louder now. I'd carried their doubt, let it weigh me down. But I was done being their invisible shadow. The candle's warmth brushed my skin, grounding me. "I deserved better," I said, voice steady. "Years of your dismissal cut deeper than Mark's lies. I stood on that stage, earned a room's respect. But here you saw only David's shining star." My chest ached, but my words flowed free. Dad cleared his throat, his voice low, hesitant. "Sarah, we didn't know," he said, eyes meeting mine. Mom's lips parted, but no words came out. David leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. "I underestimated you," he said, voice soft. Their words hung fragile but finally spoken. The room's silence was heavy, but different now. The clink of a fork broke the quiet. I looked at Ethan, his proud smile steady. Lily's eyes sparkled, her small hand reaching mine. Their faith had carried me to this moment. I felt a weight lift, light breaking through. "I'm proud of you, Sarah," Dad said slowly. His eyes held respect, a look I'd craved. Mom nodded, her face softening, almost tearful. "We were wrong," she whispered, voice breaking. David's nod was small, his regret clear. The air shifted, their walls crumbling slightly. I sat, the chair creaking under my weight. The smell of Mom's pie filled the room. I'd laid my truth bare, no longer hidden. Their apologies were small, but a start. My heart raced, the moment both heavy and free. I'd forced them to see me finally. I flashed back to the divorce, signing those papers. The kitchen table then was cold, unyielding. Mark's betrayal had nearly broken my spirit. But I'd rebuilt for my kids. Their doubt had echoed his, but no more. This dinner was my stand, my justice. The candles flickered, their light soft but steady. I served the pie, its sweetness cutting the tension. Ethan helped, his movements quick and sure. Lily giggled, her voice a spark of joy. The room felt warmer, the silence less heavy. I'd claimed my place, and they see it. Dad raised his glass, his hand slightly unsteady. To Sarah, he said, voice thick with emotion. Mom joined, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. David raised his glass, his nod sincere. The clink of their glasses echoed a fragile peace. My throat tightened, closure within reach. I looked around the table, a new beginning. The hardwood floor gleamed, reflecting the light. I'd built this home, this life, this moment. Their doubt had pushed me to this edge. But their respect now was a hard-won victory. My heart steadied, the ache easing slowly. I cleared the plates, the kitchen bustling quietly. The smell of coffee drifted, grounding me again. Ethan and Lily helped, their laughter soft. Mom lingered, her hand brushing my arm. "We're proud, Sarah," she said, voice trembling. Her words were a balm, but I'd already healed. I stood by the sink, water running softly. The dishes clinked, a familiar grounding sound. I'd faced them, spoken my truth unapologetically. Their apologies were real, but my strength was mine. I didn't need their pride to feel whole. This moment was my closure, my freedom. The night settled, the house quiet now. I stepped outside, the air cool and crisp. Austin's skyline twinkled, a distant steady glow. I'd rewritten our story, claimed my place. Their doubt couldn't hold me back anymore. I was enough, and they finally knew. I thought of Ethan and Lily, my legacy. Their faith had been my anchor always. The stars above were bright, unwavering. I'd fought for this moment, for my truth. Their respect was new, but my strength wasn't. I'd won this battle, but was it enough? Would you have faced them like I did? Morning light spilled through my new home's wide windows. The smell of fresh coffee curled from the kitchen. I stood by the counter, my mug warm. Ethan's laughter echoed from the living room. Lily's crayons scratched softly, coloring her latest drawing. The air felt lighter, my heart finally steady. Months had passed since the dinner, the confrontation. My family's apologies lingered, fragile but real. Dad's nod of respect was etched in memory. Mom's tearful words had softened old wounds. David's silence spoke louder than his boasts. I'd claimed my truth, and they'd seen. The dining room table gleamed now, a gathering place. A framed photo from the conference sat proudly. My parents had gifted it, a quiet gesture. Its glass caught the sunlight, reflecting my journey. I traced its edges, pride swelling within. This house was my legacy, built from strength. I sipped my coffee, its bitterness grounding me. The fridge hummed a familiar morning sound. Ethan walked in his backpack, ready for school. "Mom, you seem happy," he said, smiling softly. His words warmed me, a quiet validation. Lily ran in her drawing, clutched tightly. "Look, Mom, it's us," she said, beaming. The paper showed our family, me in the center. Her crayons had colored me bold, unyielding. I hugged her, her hair smelling of strawberries. They were my reason, my unbreakable anchor. Their faith had carried me through the dark. I drove them to school, the car radio low. Austin's skyline sparkled under the morning sun. The air smelled faintly of Lily's stuffed bunny. I glanced at Ethan, his earbuds loosely in. "You did it, Mom," he said, voice steady. My throat tightened, his belief a gift. Back home, I sat at my desk, laptop open. An email from Susan glowed on the screen. "Sarah, you're mentoring our new hires," it read. I smiled, honored to guide others forward. My work wasn't just projects, it was legacy. I'd built something bigger than myself. I walked to the living room, floors gleaming. The walls held photos of Ethan and Lily. One showed my keynote, the crowd's applause frozen. I'd faced my family's doubts, stood tall. Their respect came late, but I didn't need it. My worth was mine, earned through years. I thought back to Mark's betrayal, 2018's pain. The divorce papers had felt like defeat. The kitchen table then was cold and forgiving. I'd rebuilt for my kids, for me. Their doubt had echoed his, but no longer. I was free, my strength undeniable now. The doorbell rang, Jen's voice calling out. She stepped in, her smile warm and familiar. The smell of her lavender perfume drifted in. "You've changed, Sarah," she said, eyes bright. I nodded, the weight of her words settling. I'd found closure not in them, but me. We sat on the couch, its fabric soft. The room felt alive, filled with quiet pride. I told her about the dinner, their apologies. "They saw me finally," I said softly. But I'd seen myself first, and that mattered. The realization was my truest victory. I walked to the window, city lights twinkling. The night air was cool, carrying soft sounds. I'd fought for this life, this home, this peace. My family's doubt had pushed me to grow. Their respect was a bonus, not my goal. I was enough, and I always had been. Lily's drawing hung on the fridge, vibrant. It showed me strong, a hero in her eyes. Ethan's quiet faith had held me steady. They were my legacy, my reason to rise. I'd teach them to stand, to claim their worth. This was the life I'd built for us. I mentored a colleague later that week. Her eyes were wide, her story like mine. The office smelled of coffee and paper. I shared my journey, my quiet strength. She listened, her pen scratching notes quickly. Helping her felt like planting a seed. The house settled into its evening hum. The dishwasher churned a soft, steady rhythm. I stood by the photo, its frame worn. My keynote moment was more than applause. It was proof I'd rewritten my story. I'd healed not for them, but for me. I thought of my parents, their newfound respect. David's calls were different now, more genuine. Mom sent recipes, her way of connecting. But I didn't need their pride to shine. My strength was mine, my closure complete. I'd built a legacy for my kids. The stars outside were bright, unwavering. I stood in the quiet, my heart full. This house, this life was my triumph. I'd faced betrayal doubt and my own fears. I'd emerged whole stronger than before. My story wasn't over and neither was theirs. Have you found closure after being dismissed? What's your story of rebuilding your worth? Where are you listening from? Share below.